Hi, I'm Mehrnaz Campbell, founder and CEO of Cheemia and author of The Omni Advantage. Welcome to our second episode of our LinkedIn Live sessions in 2025. And I'm so glad you're here. I'm dialing in from Lidditz in Pennsylvania, a sleepy little American town about an hour from Philly. What about you? Where are you tuning in from? What's the sky like where you are? Right now here is a bit like overcast. I'd love to hear from you. So please drop a quick hello in the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. You know, at Cheemia, my purpose has been about unleashing the human potential to create a healthier world, and by inspiring pharma leaders and encouraging them to shift from being message bearers to becoming trusted advisors for healthcare professionals. And over the last 3 years, we've tackled the challenges of digital transformation in healthcare. And now this year, I really want to take this series even further to spark connections, to inspire change and drive meaningful transformation that really improves outcomes for healthcare professionals, but more importantly for the patients. Let me have a sip of my drink. I'm losing my voice. I feel really passionate about helping pharma professionals feel confident using technology to improve their engagement with healthcare professionals. And that's why I've been interviewing inspiring leaders to learn from their experience, but also give them a platform so they can share their insights with you. And I'm really thrilled to welcome Nico Renner, product manager in oncology at BeiGene from Switzerland. Hi, Nico. It's really great to have you here. How are you doing?
It's an honor to be here, and I'm excited for the discussion and all the great questions from the audience, hopefully.
Brilliant. So before we dive in, I just wanted to take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about Nico. You probably have seen his post on LinkedIn, but in case you haven't come across Nico, Nico is not your typical pharma marketeer. He considers himself as a hybrid between business and biotechnology because he studied both of them. And almost by coincidence, Nico started to work on digital transformation projects in oncology while he was working for Roche in Germany. And he's gathered experiences in social media management for patient education in ophthalmology. And what I love about Nico is he brings this new perspective and questions to pharma. And he's not one of us who's been around, so he doesn't even know what the old days were like. He's kind of like the millennial or Gen Z, and he sees things from a fresh perspective. Nico's a firm believer in outcome-driven marketing, and his signature approach is no shiny slides, but tangible results. He believes that marketing is not about opinion, but it's about data. And when he's not redefining the marketing playbook, you can find him sparking thoughtful discussions on LinkedIn about the future of pharma marketing, digital engagement, and customer experience in pharma. In fact, he was named one of the top 12 experts in marketing and omnichannel engagement to follow in 2025. That's amazing achievement, Nico. Well done.
It was also a pretty big surprise for me, to be honest. I didn't think of this, and I actually went through the list. Then I found your name. I was like, oh, there's some. Actually, I went through the list to see people I could follow, and then I found my name. It was like, what? That's me. So it was a nice surprise, but I'm very happy about it.
You know,
and congratulations to yourself, by the way.
Thank you so much, Nico. It wasn't a surprise to me. I often feel I wish I could hold a mirror so you could see what I see, or you could see what Marco, Andrea see. We see you as a real talent, and I'm really delighted to have you here on this show. You know, Nico, I usually talk about how I met the speakers, so I just thought let's reflect back. I remember, I think you first contacted me around May 23. Because at Dubrovnik or Alams, I was going to publish the Omni Advantage, and you messaged me and said, where is it coming? Do you remember we connected on LinkedIn and had a chat?
Exactly. I just started my new role back at Roche as a digital manager, and then you mentioned that you wrote a book about digital transformation, omnichannel marketing, and so on. And I was like, well, perfect. If you start a new role and you want to educate yourself, a book could be a good idea. but unfortunately, it wasn't published back then, so I needed to wait. But that's the first time I reached out to you. Yeah.
And then we met last year when we both were speaking at Vienna at the next Pharma summit, right? Which was great. It was really nice because I was meeting you for the first time, and I was meeting Marco for the first time. And I think all three of us tend to follow each other's posts on LinkedIn and like connect digitally. So it was lovely to see you in person. I look forward to seeing more of you.
That is the funny thing about social media is you think you know each other because you follow your posts and you engage online, sometimes even text, but you like essentially never meet. And then when you meet, it's not like it's you first meet a person. You feel like you know each other already. It's a bit weird, but that's power of social media, actually, establish trust over long distances and on screens, right?
Yeah,
So,
and I think this
and I'm happy to be here again.
Yeah, and I think this shows really the power of remote or digital tools to help us connect. We could use digital channels to have a human to a human or develop a human to human relationship, because I felt by the time I met you in person, I knew a lot about you because I'm kind of like following your post and we've had like a remote conversation. And I've met so many amazing people over the last 3 or 4 years, initially through remote channels. And I find is the same thing when we're trying to connect with healthcare professionals. A lot of them wouldn't want to see us if they don't know us from Adam. They want to have some information to ensure that the meeting merits them like connecting with us. The more we have that, human touch in our digital communication, the more we can actually portray who we really are. So I think, the way we met and many others is probably a testament that digital tools are an effective way of connecting with humans. But you need to make sure your communications are human to human, not robotic.
Yeah, like don't create AI generated posts without proofreading them and then expect AI generated comments. That's not true engagement. But if you do it right, and I think that holds true for a lot of conversations, engagements across the industry, then you can actually create meaningful bondings all over the place by using digital channels. Fully agree.
Yeah. So let's dive into the questions. I've got plenty of questions for you, Nico, but this is not just about me. This is a live event and it's about our audience. So I want to encourage our audience to, share the questions through the chat. And I think with Nico's expertise in marketing and in particular social media and human connection and this inclusivity, this is your chance to ask him any questions. He's got a different perspective to those of us who've been in the industry over 3 decades. So just pop in your question in the chat. And if you're enjoying what Nico is sharing, don't forget to like or comment about what he says, because I love to hear from you and your thoughts. Your contribution is going to make this conversation a lot more richer than just me and Nico having a conversation between us. And also, I wanted to reiterate that Nico's representing his own views, not his employer. So that gives you freedom to kind of like speak freely and share your opinion, Nico. But also I would ask you, please don't mention any brands so we kind of like stay compliant with our industry code of practice. How does that sound?
Don't start with the tricky questions. Keep them for the end.
Okay. So I'm going to start by a nice one saying, why did you choose to pursue a career in pharma? Tell me about your story.
Yeah, that's an easy question. So first of all, when I first came in touch with biology, and so honestly, that was in school, and I was just fascinated by molecular biology and chemistry and how the human body worked. And essentially, specifically cancer, to be honest, even though it's not necessarily a nice topic you want to talk about, but I found it fascinating how your cells could choose a totally different path and cause these horrible diseases. But honestly, joining Pharma, that was then an accumulation of coincidences, basically after studying biology, doing internships, getting to know people. And now what I really enjoy about the industry and what I enjoy every year, I think I enjoy it more, is that you have this purpose of doing something meaningful to the world, to people. And it sounds cheesy, but I think all of us who work in this industry love that about it. And honestly, when I started studying biology, I was just fascinated by the science, and now I have a bigger picture. Maybe I just grew up also and see more meaning in life, maybe. But yeah, that was the reason why I stayed in pharma or the healthcare industry in general.
Thanks for sharing. I think having the purpose makes everything much more meaningful, and you kind of like turn up for work feeling that you're making a difference rather than just doing a job. And that increases the enjoyment when you have that clear purpose, and you feel as if it fires the passion in your heart about what you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Nico, reflecting on your journey from Roche to BeiGene, how has your perspective on digital transformation in pharma has evolved, would you say?
Yeah, I hope it has evolved. That's the goal, to evolve and improve, right? I think if I look at the entire industry, I think I started in 2021 at Roche, and back then all this omni-channel hype, the big wave already started, and everybody wanted to do something digital, measure everything, get the same CX as Amazon and Spotify. There was a huge hype around it. I think we reduced this by now because we realized, okay, if we measure everything, we don't actually have the time to take action upon it. The ambition of being the next Netflix as pharma is a bit weird because we're not entertainment, we're actually work and science. There are a few learnings that I see in the entire industry. And then when it comes, even the word omni, right, Latin for everything, we thought we needed to do everything. Every channel that you could imagine, you should use to be omnipresent. Now we realize it's like basically playing piano. You can press all the keys at once, but it's not going to be music. But it's maybe sometimes sufficient to press 3 keys to make music. And in terms of using channels, if you use 3 channels, but your customers are present in those channels and they use it a lot, then this is more effective than using 500 channels, but not measuring the right things and getting all overwhelmed with those channels. So I feel like we went a little bit from doing everything because it needed to be digital because it was fancy to, okay, where does digital actually make sense? And we questioned a lot of things as an industry, which I think is good.
Yeah, I think from a consumer point of view, if all the people we shop from just send us communication from every channel, it's going to be overwhelming, but it also makes you think that they don't know me. Like Netflix communicates with you, feedback, makes suggestions quite subtly without being intrusive. But I think pharma's approach to engaging HCP has always been around, let's just throw the kitchen sink at it and see what will stick. And then when all this, we didn't evolve for years. Like the only evolution I saw in pharma for 30 years was going from printed PDF detail aid to having it on iPad. And then the pandemic happened. And then suddenly we thought, whoopsie, we need to do something about it. And the evolutions really happened in the last few years. But then I don't think the mindset really shifted. It was just like, let's do everything we did before and then chuck it through all the channels and see what sticks, rather than understanding what's relevant. Because at the end of the day, when we make purchasing decisions, is one or two things make us make that purchasing decisions. We don't need 10 different reasons to do it, but we don't have that push-pull strategy in pharma communications. Would you agree?
I would agree. Probably this is not necessarily a digital transformation or channel problem, but actually a problem of how do we create content. Because if I have 10 features or characteristics that define my product, I can talk about all these 10, but maybe only 3 actually have a meaningful value to a physician or to a patient. So why would I talk about, I don't know, just to make up something, why would I talk about mode of action if it's not relevant in this and that specific case? Just as an example. And I think then we talk about 10 things instead of 3. So we already start from scratch to talk about too many things and too many channels. Again, things so content creation and really figuring out what is actually the pain point I want to address is crucial. And then when it comes to push and pull, I mean, probably it is also, and I'm not so sure whether I figured out the absolute truth in that case, but if I look at Netflix, this is pure pull. I want to watch this Netflix series on my flight and on my sofa at night because it's entertainment to me. So obviously this is the pull. Will clinical studies ever be an entire pull? Is this something, I mean, a lot of people do enjoy their work. I do as well. And it's hard to differentiate between work and life sometimes. But I would say if you have the choice between watching a movie with your family or reading clinical studies, it's not entertainment. So therefore, pull maybe yes in certain instances, but we're not a consuming industry. Where I do see this trend though is essentially social media, because I had a lot of discussions around, okay, if I post on social media, will I annoy people? But the difference to websites, emails, WhatsApp, or whatsoever is that you have the algorithm actually helping you. So the algorithm sort of helps you to put your message out in a moment that is comfortable for the recipient. The algorithm also supports assessing whether this content piece is relevant to your recipient. So I feel like in social media, it's more a pull, because I don't decide when you open up LinkedIn and scroll through and see my post. That's totally up to you. So I think this is maybe a channel in which we got close to pull rather than push.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that comprehensive answer to my question. I just want to say hello to Aida, who's joining us from Valencia. We've got Alexander joining us from Germany. Hi there. And also we have someone, LinkedIn user, joining us from Canada. I've got loads of questions for Nico, but why don't you say hello? And if you've not said hello already, but pop your questions for Nico in the chat so I can bring them into this conversation, because without your contribution, it'd be just a conversation between me and Nico, and I don't want to miss out on your perspective. So while you're writing your questions, I just want to ask you something else, Nico. You talked about, the specific instances, and I just wanted to ask you, can you think of a specific instance where that data-driven marketing help improve patient outcomes and more effective HCP engagement? And is that like related to social media use or not? That would be really interesting to know from you.
Yes, so the examples that come intuitively into my mind are actually from social media, because it's just a platform where you can literally measure everything and really also iterate in an incredible speed in comparison to other channels. And I mean, the impact is always in our industry a bit indirect to measure, but the example I can share is we back at Roche, I was working on a patient app, and we did a campaign, and we did A/B testings. So basically just the exact same ad, and we changed different variables. Might it be the title, the visual, or the call to action was one. I think one example was your life with the disease, or second example, your fight against this disease. And I thought your fight against is very aggressive. So our entire team actually agreed on, it could be too aggressive, but let's test. And then the click-through rate was like 3 or 4 times higher with your fight against. So we all would have lost the bet. And well, talking about the outcome or the impact, in the end, if you have a 4 times higher click-through rate or whatever your metric would be, then you can either reduce your budget and use this budget somewhere else where it really makes a difference for patients, even clinical studies or whatever example you may choose, or you can get the results you were trying to achieve in a shorter period of time, because you have a 4 times higher click-through rate. So even with these small examples, I think simple A/B testing, setting up 2 short URLs is creating impact, at least indirectly.
Yeah, I think data speaks volume, and it's really interesting because if anybody's got a chronic disease, they would feel they're fighting it because they're dealing with the side effects of medication or the symptoms of the disease. And one of our clients asked us to launch a new brand in a new market for them, and I didn't know enough about that market. So I'm actually doing social listening to the patient forums and just listening to the language patients are using to describe their challenges and how they're supporting each other has given me a lot of insight to really feel their pain and understand their pain. So I think social media or social listening could be a really effective tool. But I love the way you tested it to find out what resonates with your target audience rather than use your own assumption. I remember there was a really insightful marketing director at Pfizer that always said to me, Mehrnaz, marketeers shouldn't use market research as a crutch to lean on. They should use it as a lamp that lightens their path. So we shouldn't use market research to support our assumptions, just listen to it and act according to it.
I mean, listening is a great keyword for any marketer, because I believe it's if you can't be humble and if you care too much about your own opinion, you will probably face issues in marketing, because it's not about your opinion. It's about the opinion of literally everyone else in your customer audience, but also in pharma. If you're a marketer and you think you know better than your customer facing colleagues who see clients every day, well, you probably won't. You don't know better. You should listen. I think this is being humble is one of the key elements, at least according to my opinion, in marketing.
Yeah, I love that, because you had a post recently, you were on a field visit and listening to, insight from the team. And I think we need to really break the silo between sales and marketing and work more closely, because the field would observe, marketing can come up with solutions to resolve it. I'm just going to say hello to Denise. It's really good that you're joining us from Canada. Again, I encourage all of you to pop in your questions for Nico, particularly if you've got questions around data analysis or social media use. So while we're waiting for others to write, because sometimes there's a little bit of lag between when somebody's posting a question and I see it on the stream. Nico, I was going to ask you is, everybody's talking about omni-channel marketing, but not many describe what good would look like. Would you be able to share your views about what would good look like? And also, where do companies often go wrong when it comes to omni-channel marketing?
That is now more of a complicated and tricky question. We're getting there. Where do I start? Yeah, we're not here to discuss the easy ones, right? As I said in the beginning, I think the term as such, omni, already is a misconception, because everybody thinks we need to do everything. This is, I think, the first misconception, because you just don't have the capacity unless you already have all AI tools in the world installed and you can do it automated. I personally don't know a case where this is possible. So you don't have capacities to use all channels. That's the first misconception. I'm starting with the misconceptions, maybe. Then another aspect that I think has been discussed about a million times is personalization. What percentage of personalization do you really need? 4 years when I started, everybody said, actually, every HCP should receive a tailored message only for his needs. And yes, I agree. In theory, in an ideal world, this would be very nice. In practice, almost impossible to achieve. So where do we start? And I think if you do a proper segmentation of like 10, 15, 20% of your entire audience, and you nail that down to 10%, then segmentation as such is already a personalization. There's no need of writing the email different for everybody, because what you want to achieve is that the person receives what he or she needs. So I don't care whether I received the same message as you did, as long as it's helpful to me. And it maybe should say hello, Nico, and not hello, Mehrnaz. But I think that's another misconception about omnichannel that we had all along. And the third one I'd say is we fell in love with the solution and not the problem. So we really liked bringing up new channels. It was fancy to do this way. Sometimes I heard people saying we have more pilots than a typical airline in the pharma industry, but we never did anything with it. We just tested new channels and then we put it in a drawer. So I think that was really, we fell in love with, we need to do digital, we need to set up analytics dashboards and whatsoever, but we really forgot about why are we actually doing this, which brings me to your question, does good omni-channel marketing look like? I think you need to be in the channels where your customers are and are susceptible to what you are trying to communicate. But a huge part of omni-channel marketing is figuring out who do I talk to, what are their problems, and really get the pain points straight in the first place, and then start with your brand messaging and so on, and not start with the brand messaging and then try to find out who can I tell this story to. Think we talked a lot about channels in omni-channel marketing, but actually the content strategy is the more important piece. So vague answer. I don't have the absolute truth in that either, but I think we learned a lot about the last 4 years, and let's see whether we get a sharp answer on that in the next years.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your perspective. I think, we learned a lot in the last 3 or 4 years, and I think realistically, I think a lot of the times in marketing, we get distracted by shiny things because we think, oh, this is a new tool is going to solve all our problems. But I think we measure a lot of surrogate markers rather than the absolute outcomes. If you always measure the impact of everything in terms of improvement in engagement or improvement in, uptake, then it probably focuses on mind. But usually sales people are tasked to deliver the numbers. Marketing are tasked to deliver the messages, but then don't necessarily get measured on, sales revenue. I don't know. I think maybe if there was a harder measures, that would focus the mind. But I think it's an interesting perspective. And also I'm reflecting on some of the presentations that we both saw in Vienna. There's a new concept emerging called omni-channel. Like we've got the multi-channel, we've got the omni-channel, and the omni-channel is when you have enough data to know what channels each of the segments prefer, then you direct the communication, turn those channels on and switch the rest off, because you don't need to throw, every communication through every channel. So I think that's an interesting concept. I don't know whether you believe in it or agree with it or not, the omni-channel.
Absolutely agree on that. And it actually also emphasizes the point in the beginning, omni is already misleading to a lot of people because they think they need to do everything. So yes, I would agree on that. And also I saw that he asked how much revenue and sales do you think is coming from face-to-face? And how much of your budget then would you allocate on omni-channel activities around that? So I don't know whether I can give you an exact percentage number on that, but I would probably say at least 2/3, maybe 70, 80% is based on the relationship that people have with stakeholders in the healthcare industry. I'm a true believer that it is all about trust. And 4 years ago, we thought, well, we could do digital launches. We just send out email campaigns, set up nice web pages, and that's it. Now we came to realize, well, it's not that easy. It is actually the face-to-face interaction that really drives our conversation. So I would say face-to-face is the main driver. You have your face-to-face colleagues in the center of your universe, and then whatever you do around is complementary to this. I do believe that the omni-channel efforts are worth it. So there are a bunch of examples, and this, I mean, there's a million of examples on that. Emails, social media, WhatsApp, whatever digital tool that facilitates the human interaction is essentially in part of the omni-channel universe. And that facilitation helps to improve face-to-face interactions. So I would say majority comes from face-to-face interactions, but digital can definitely help.
Thank you for answering, Marcus, and thank you for Marcus asking the question. I think it's a really interesting question. I think it varies from different geographies to the other geographies. Like in UK, if you're relying on face-to-face communication, you're missing out on so many opportunities because access to HCPs is really difficult. And usually the first channel they prefer is, email or, remote channels for engagement. And I think according to Across Health data, about a third of marketing budget across the top 5 euro is spent on digital channels, but they don't necessarily, not many marketeers, about 11% of marketeers in Europe are happy with the results they're getting from that investment. It doesn't mean we shouldn't invest. It's just I think we haven't perfected the recipe for that. But I would say, I do direct selling to healthcare professionals. I do account management, and I find I'm based in US. I'm influencing business in UK at ICB, ICS level or health boards. With that, good digital contents from marketing or digital channels, we would not be able to have double-digit growth on the brand. So you need to have a blended approach. And instead of saying face-to-face, I would say human-to-human connection. Like the video calls using Teams or Zoom could replicate what you would have in face-to-face if you're sharing relevant content with HCPs. And we find the Viva Pulse report shows that reps are more likely to use digital content through a video call, and as a result you have 2.5 times more treatment starts. But the reality is, again, the evidence shows 77% of content created by marketeers are not used by the field team. They don't see the light of the day, and they use very little material. So I think there needs to be a better coordination between the two functions and find out what's the root cause of not using the material. Richard Evans made an interesting comment here. Richard, you say this is a behavioral science framing. It'd be really good. I wish I could bring you to this conversation, but it'd be really good for you to explain what do you mean by that, because I think there's a reluctance from field teams to adopt the digital tools and channels, and the HCPs have that preference, but we're not meeting their demand in the way they prefer it. And we've got a comment here from Marcus saying, wouldn't it be more profitable than to stop omnichannel and save the enormous costs? What's your thoughts on that, Nico?
I mean, human interactions are also not for free. If I may say that bluntly. I agree on your point that actually with face-to-face, I was also referring to any sort of human interaction. Could be a personal meeting, could be WhatsApp messages, could be wherever it's compliant to use WhatsApp, by the way, or could be a Zoom call. But I really think that it's a human interaction that makes a difference in our industry. And I personally, and I guess Marcus doesn't have numbers for that either. It's hard to measure in our industry, but there is numbers supporting that digital tools help us to engage with our customers. I think we just need to pick the right ones and use them efficiently, because that brings me back to my point. Obviously, if you're trying to do 15 digital channels at once, but you're not doing them in a great quality, then the return on invest will be horrible. If you focus on 3, but really use them well, then I think that makes all the difference. And by the way, if you use digital tools in a smart way, then I believe they are sometimes way cheaper than the analog world we're used to. Like if I just look at flyers and so on, I mean, calculate what you pay for a flyer, for printing, for distributing, also all the working time included, and imagine how easy it is to set up a proper email. Plus, if something goes wrong or some data changes whatsoever, in retrospective, you can change it on a website. In a flyer, I can't, so I need to do it all over again. Long story short, I think no, it would not be profitable to just turn all the digital channels off.
Yeah, I agree with what Nico said. In fact, just to give you an example, I reached out to this senior consultant who leads the department because I'm launching a new product on behalf of one of our clients. And the email, she booked an appointment to see me. We met on Teams yesterday, had a conversation based on her need. She was really interested, and she asked me to email her specific assets and calculation and budget impact. So she's going to have a conversation with her team, and we're going to meet in a couple of weeks' time in the UK, for me, is about the journey of taking the customer along that path and responding to them based on what they need. But also you need to give them tools so they can go and have those internal conversation. And in that short conversation, I found that for that particular brand, formal inclusion is not required. They don't need to have any changes. As long as they agree amongst them, they're going to adapt this brand instead of what they're using. So I think using omni-channel can actually save us time and get us the results if we're measuring the outcomes there. So I hope that answers your question, Marcus. Please don't stop omni-channel, because we see a lot of value in engaging HCPs.
I mean, it would be an interesting A/B testing experiment, though.
Well, I think the ultimate nirvana, having a digitally enabled field force that connects with the marketing, because without marketing and medical, we won't be effective in the field. For me, is orchestration and alignment and looking for marginal gains between different parties. I feel equipped to have conversation with HCPs because I've got the support of, compliance, PV, MedInfo, and marketing. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do it. But there needs to be this constant dialogue. Like yesterday, I came out of that meeting, I wrote immediately to marketing saying, this is the pages that really resonated with the healthcare professionals. This is what I suggest you develop as a PDF so we can leave after the meeting because they requested it. Out of these 25 slides, these 4 had the highest impact. So there needs to be a constant dialogue and refinement. We find answers if we work together and find the magic recipe. Carlos, good to have you here. Let's see what Carlos says. He says, omnichannel is not about fancy platforms and hundreds of deliverables. It's about a balance of push and pull, ensuring relevant engagement. I couldn't have said it better. Thank you so much for your contribution. Nico, do you want to comment on our friend?
I mean,
Carlos?
Yeah, that really is the description of what I meant by we need to fall in love with the problem and not the solution. Pharma fell in love with the solution, and we had all these deliverables and KPIs, and we wanted to show how digital we are, instead of actually focusing on did we solve the customer's problem. No, we focused on how many digital channels can we set up, and I think that's what the industry as a whole realized by now, and we start to adapt that.
And Nico, you talk about this. I love how you say falling in love with the problem. How do you spend time to really understand the problem before you develop the solution? Because I think figuring that out would really help us better tailor our digital transformation strategies.
Yeah. So honestly, when you start in a new indication, also in my age, honestly, I didn't spend decades in the industry. Then the first thing you do is ask. And who do you ask? Well, if I want to learn about the indication in depth, I obviously go to my medical colleagues and try to understand what does the treatment algorithm look like in a certain indication, what do patients suffer, what are the typical symptoms, how does the patient journey look like. So all these things you can literally just ask your colleagues. Then I also believe spending time with your customer-facing colleagues in the field, at congresses, at whatever external-facing events really opens up your eyes. Just to give one brief example of trying to understand the problem as a marketer. Look, if you're a textbook marketeer, you probably design your folder and you think, okay, these are the 5 slides and this is the story flow and this will always happen exactly in that order. And then you spend yourself time in the field and you realize, okay, these conversations never go as they planned. And actually I need to prepare this or at least incorporate this in my plan. I can't have 20 core messages and I can't have a 20 slide folder. So I think essentially asking your colleagues, your customers, patients, what it really is like from their perspective, that means understanding the problem and not of course, doing research and literature also helps, but it's never going to transfer the feelings that you will sense if you talk to people. So that would be my recommendation. If you start tomorrow as a product manager, go talk to your colleagues and ask as many questions as you have or as you need to really understand the problems you have, your clients have, or patients have.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Marcus made a really valid point here. It says sometimes we feel we are overcomplicating things. And I think if we understood the problem, we could just go directly and address it. We don't need to just have too much information. Less often is more impactful. And it actually makes customers feel you listen to them, because they feel our communications in relationship to information they shared, rather than saying, I have to tell you everything. And I think sometimes, we find the effective sales conversation between us and pharma is when we begin by asking them what's their challenges before just diving in and saying, this is my product and it's best for all the patients. That's not true. It's good for some patients, and it's just giving them the choice to have that understanding of where they can use it appropriately. So thank you for contribution from everyone in this chat. This is so exciting. I was going to ask you, Nico, how do you create how do you kind of balance the need for innovation in digital marketing with the regulatory requirements that is essential in pharma? Because I often see that as an excuse for not doing anything, but how do you navigate it?
Well, I see, and this is my personal opinion, again, as you said in the beginning, but I see the roles of legal and compliance. They are not the police. They are not blockers that always just try to, they don't get up in the morning and think, okay, not today I'm going to say no to Nico. No, they're doing their job, and their job is very important because we're in a highly regulated industry for a reason. And to stick to all those laws and to just behave in a compliant way, you need the support. What we sometimes do wrong, and with we, I mean marketeers, I think I can speak for all of us. We have deadlines. We run after them. We're short on time. We need to deliver some deliverables, as Carlos mentioned, and then everything needs to go fast. Then you created this material, and in the very end, you're like, oh yeah, I need a Viva approval. So I push it in Viva and text my colleague, hey, I need approval by tomorrow. That's not an ideal setting. And if I were a compliance manager in that case, I probably wouldn't like it. Probably you could do it for 1 or 2 times if it's urgent, but that happens too often, I think, at least in according to the experience of the conversations I had. So I would rather propose, if you have an idea, go and check up early, even if you have just a draft or, hey, this is a rough idea I would like to explore, then you get an early input, and then you can either fail quick and cheap, or move forward but really collaborate on this. I think that's just one perspective I wanted to share. And then it's a repetition, but still, if you're innovating, think why you're innovating. Are you innovating because you need an innovation project that is going to be shown in some fancy dashboard, or are you innovating to solve a customer problem? I think that's a very, you can't repeat that often enough, and we're all falling in that same trap.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Last year, I was involved in judging compliance competition as part of a compliance conference. And, I've never been to a compliance conference, but just attending the conference and just reading the entries and judging them, I found the most innovative, omni-channel strategies were developed when the compliance people were involved at the early stage of ideation, and they were used as an enabler rather than a police or, a break. And I think the way the teams approached it, they had much more, broke down the silos, and they had a much more cohesive approach, invited them in when they had the first idea, saying, this is a problem, this is an idea. Can you tell us how we can do this in a compliant way? And then the compliance gave them the pathway. It wasn't after they developed everything saying, can you approve it? They were their buddies along that journey. So I think what you said, I saw so many good examples, and I thought, this is brilliant. This is a team sport with the compliance being involved at earlier. So if you are looking at innovation, instead of thinking they're going to say no, get them involved earlier and see them as an enabler, would really have a big impact on your outcome.
And if I may add one other comment, if you're doing something and they need to say no because it's against the law or against whatever a regulatory hurdle, then thank thank them that they actually told you to not do it, because that would have meant big trouble for you. So yes, it's a team, and you should appreciate that.
And as Marcus said, by not doing it, you can actually save yourself money and a lot of time and hassle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
That's
Nico, I love the way you use LinkedIn to communicate. And in a recent post, you said the good thing about digital marketing is that you can measure everything, and the bad thing is you can measure everything. Can you expand on what you meant by this, please?
Yeah. So when I did my first digital campaigns, and this was, as I said, 3 years ago, when the omni-channel hype meant to measure everything, because then you can gather insights and act upon them, I realized, okay, I measured so many KPIs that actually reading through them would take hours, and they're so complicated that even I don't understand that anymore. And back then I was a digital manager, so I delivered these solutions or analytics then to marketeers. And I realized, okay, if I don't understand them anymore, how will someone who looks at this half an hour a month will understand this? So I meant by this that by reducing the KPIs or outcomes you look at drastically, you save time to actually do something with it. Because with the amount of data you gather, the amount of time you need to analyze this obviously grows as well. And sometimes, maybe just to mention one, bounce rate or duration on site. Yes, in some contexts it can be helpful, but on an average site, if it could 10 seconds of a bounce rate could either mean your site is so good, people join the site, find what they need, and they leave after 5 seconds. Perfect customer experience. But it could also mean people join, try to search for what they need, and after 10 seconds, it's just like, okay, I don't find it here, I leave. In both cases, you have 10 seconds of bounce rate. What does that tell you? So my point is, focus on the KPIs that actually tell you something and that you can react upon, and not KPIs you need to interpret with a team of 20 to try and to make sense out of it.
Does
that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think the more data you have, the more overwhelming it becomes. But I think I always say, so what? Like, why am I collecting this data, and so what? What does it tell me? I think the difficulty is drawing meaning and insight from the data when it's like too much of it. So I think sometimes it's good to get a nice cup of tea or maybe a glass of wine and just reflect, what is it telling you? So you draw meaning rather than just keep collecting the data.
And one more aspect on this is maybe also, and I said before, we have more pilots than an airline in the pharma industry. The problems with piloting something, and we often compare it then to running systems. Like, take, for example, banners in conference magazines versus doing ads on LinkedIn, for instance. Then we start comparing. We don't have the same numbers, and then you run your pilot. The numbers obviously in the beginning are not really good, because it's new to everyone, so we don't know how to do it right. And then after 3 months, you look at it and like, the numbers are not good, drop it. Sometimes numbers, as with clinical studies, data gets more mature. Well, in digital pilot projects, data also gets more mature. So define a period which makes sense, but just don't look at the numbers after 2 weeks, be disappointed, and drop it, because it needs some ramp up in certain cases.
That's a really valid point. We compare apples with apples, not with pears, to draw meaning from it.
Yeah.
So, Nico, do you see any emerging digital trends that you believe will have a big impact on pharma in the next few years?
Yes, there are plenty. I'm going to just mention AI, but I'll let the experts explain more advanced on this. But this is obviously a big transformative and disruptive innovation. But maybe something I see in the future, and if I also compare this to other countries, is social media, both from a perspective of we will see much more mad influencers, so physicians sharing their thoughts, explaining whatever aspects about diseases online, because that's where people listen and have time to listen. but also I don't want to call it influencer when it comes to pharma, because I feel influencing always is a bit negatively associated, but call it digital opinion leaders or thought leaders. I think these voices on LinkedIn will become more frequent. So as of now, I think only 1% of all LinkedIn users ever shared content. But I think if I look to countries where social media is more present, like Spain, Brazil, and so on, they are much more active on social. And I followed this this journey for a few years now. And now I can see that also in Germany and Switzerland, people start to post more frequently. And my prediction would be in 5 or maybe, let's say 3 to 5 years, we will see more pharma colleagues and peers posting and sharing information beyond the product, by the way, obviously, because you can't share that publicly, but about healthcare economics, for instance, things like that. I think we will see much more people sharing this on social, but also debating it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. That's a new trend. I actually spoke to Azumain. He's a doctor who's a content creator, and he's got 400,000 followers, and he's just started his journey. And I think he's educating patients and using this platform for educating people. So I think numbers again speak. If 400,000 people are following him, obviously what he's sharing is seen as a value. And again, when I'm doing social listening on patient forums, they're using those platforms to share their challenges, the solutions, and is what people are gravitating towards, because maybe social platforms are more entertaining. And you said in pharma we're not entertaining, but people may be seeking that entertainment value through communication. But it's definitely a growing trend. But again,
edutainment, they say.
Say that again.
They say it's edutainment, and a mix between entertainment and education.
Yeah.
And also now that you say that about the numbers, I mean, if you look at the demographics, one big bias we all have is to think that it's just a linear progression, and that younger generations will substitute elderly generations, and then from today to tomorrow, out of a sudden, everybody uses social media. But the reality is that the fastest growing segments are, I think, at least in Germany, I looked at the numbers of last year, the people between 50 and 65 years, this is the segment where the social media usage grew the most, relatively speaking. So it's like over 10% of growth of active social media usage. And we think it's far, far in the future, but it's actually become reality very soon.
Wow, I did not know that. That's a really interesting statistic. Thanks for sharing it. So, Nico, I'm just conscious of time, so I was just going to ask you, we've got a prompt here from Carlos, by the way. I know you've read my book, The Omni Advantage, and you've posted about it on LinkedIn. In fact, I thought your posts were absolutely brilliant. I love the way you use the carousel format. I must admit, I've not used that a lot in the past, but I'm going to take your lead and do that. But I just wanted to ask you, this is your chance to share your feedback and maybe tell us what's your favorite chapter or concept so far. And I just wanted to flag Carlos, who I totally respect. He endorses that. If you haven't read it, read the Omni Advantage book. Thank you, Carlos. I really appreciate it. So, Nico, what's your comic favorite bit or key message you took away?
A chapter that comes to my mind now, top of head, is the one with Florent, who I don't remember literally, but he said basically, we think that physicians remember our names, brands, the nice slide decks we sent, or so on, while in reality, what they care about is patients and what we offer them to help patients. So that sometimes we think our communications and so on are way more important than they actually are, because the value we deliver, and that's in literally every corporate slide deck of pharmaceutical companies, right? We deliver value if we help physicians to treat their patients in an optimal way. That's something that really stuck with me, that chapter. And in general, I really like the book, because you are close enough to the industry to really know all the details and facets, but still you can be brutal and honest with your opinion. And I think we need that, because sometimes the mirror you mentioned before, it was really a mirror and in front of your face. You feel like, yeah, actually that's true. We should change that. So
thank you so much for your feedback. I just want to kind of like share something, a little bit of announcement. When I wrote the book and published it, at the time, AI and social media were not so prominent. And somebody said to me last year, said, Mehrnaz, it'd be really good for you to add a chapter about AI. So I decided for 2025, I'm going to publish the second edition. I'm having a chapter on AI. In fact, I've finished writing it, and I'm waiting for contribution from a couple of thought leaders. And I'm writing a chapter on social media, and I've invited Nico to contribute to that chapter. So watch this space. We would, share our knowledge and insight to the best of our knowledge at the time with you, and hopefully this way we keep the book up to date as our industry evolves. So I'm not standing still. I'm just trying to continue bring that mirror and the reality from those two new perspectives as well. So thank you, Nico. It's been absolute pleasure having you here, and thank you for sharing your candid experience and insights in this. And I guess one of the reasons I wrote the book was I was really tired of seeing pharma communicating without truly connecting with HCPs. For me, connection is more than just communication. It's about really engaging and focusing on the other person, not talking about ourselves, but really talking about the pain points of the other person and seeking to understand them. And I think that's the core message I try to communicate in the book. And is also the mission that it drives everything I do, because I think the better we understand the pain point of the recipient, the more we can really add a value to them. And I love the way that, Nico, you drew your attention, that is, let's fall in love with the problem rather than the solution.
Yeah, and I can only agree. And there are a few also paragraphs in the book where you also shed light on the interaction between marketing, medical, whatever, with customer-facing functions, because that's essentially the same thing. You need to change perspective to really understand, okay, what is this job looking like, and what do I need to provide so that my colleagues actually can do a good job working with physicians. And you also have a few good thoughts about that in the book. I like those as well.
Thank you so much. Nico, it's been incredible having you here today, and I'm sure our audience really enjoyed hearing your insight and your perspective. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. It's been amazing.
Thanks for the invitation. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, and also I wanted to thank everyone who joined us live. Thank you for being part of this conversation, sharing your comments, asking questions. And I hope you found value in what we discussed during the conversation with Nico today. I think at the end of the day, we all talk about omni-channel, but what we really need is not omni-channel. What we want is a meaningful engagement with healthcare professionals. And engagement is not just coverage and frequency, it's more about listening, understanding, and adding real value that addresses their pain point. And that's how we can become truly their trusted advisors, that they want to listen to us. And I believe we all have the power to do something so much bigger than ourselves. I think if you break down the internal silos between sales, marketing, and medical, and focus on people and empower them and invest in their growth and unlock their true potential, we together can really create a healthier world. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you in our next month's episode on a digital transformation series.
Have a nice evening.